Today we're going to take a look at the faction focus for Space Marines and talk about that shiny new Neo-Volkite pistol that this lieutenant seems to have acquired. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. We've been going through the 9th edition previews day by day, and today Games Workshop has given us a discussion of the Space Marines. Let's take a look at what we've got. So basically the majority of the article today was just talking about how the various rules that we've seen so far will be impacting the Space Marines. They noted that Big Guns Never Tire is pretty excellent for Redemptors and Invictors, which I'd certainly agree with. Basically, if it's got a heavy weapon and really needs to move each turn, such as these guys, or indeed any of the Space Marine fast attack choices such as land speeders or attack bikes, then they're all going to be a lot more usable. They're not having to make a weird trade-off with either using their movement to their full ability or firing on full effectiveness, but not both. These units are going to be a lot more easy to use as a result, and it can only be a win for the Space Marine arsenal. I'd further say that things like Vindicators will also see a bit more use. They generally have to move each turn to try and get that Demolisher Cannon in range, and not taking a penalty for that movement is good. This will be helpful for things like the Stormhawk Interceptor and the Storm Talon Gunship. Again, no penalty to moving and shooting means that these guys are basically going to be getting a 25% damage increase or better. And even weirdly, rules at the moment are that Thunderfire Cannons will now be able to move and fire for no penalty, even if it is just 3 inches. They then went on to talk a bit about blast weapons, particularly Thunderfires and Scorpiuses getting extra shots against really big hordes, although unless the blast weapon rule has any other intricacies that we've not seen, basically these guys don't get any benefit whatsoever when they're targeting units that are between 6 and 10 models, but jump up extraordinarily in terms of damage output whenever they're targeting true hordes, things that are 11 or more models in strength, such as say Orcs or Tyranid Termagants or something. Honestly, I could see these things being incredibly threatening to those kind of armies. A trio of Thunderfire Cannons, which at the moment is relatively cheap, putting out a ridiculous 36 shots hitting on 2s every single turn, is just something that's going to chew through hordes in no time at all. I suspect that Thunderfire Cannons will go up as a result of this, but either way they are going to turn into a more anti-horde option for Marines. It could be now something that you specifically take in your army to try and counter big horde armies. There was also a bit of a mentioning of strategic reserves and using the line of sight blocking ruins to try and help keep your units dealing damage without getting shot themselves. To be honest, I think that this is going to be a nature of 9th edition in general, and I suspect will be quite good for the game. More line of sight blocking terrain does mean that you can hide certain crucial units, so just not get alpha struck straight away, and have your most important things just gone straight off the table. Marines in particular I think will have a little bit more use with using terrain to their advantage like this. They tend to have quite elite units with small footprints, which will be easier to hide out of line of sight, outside any obscuring terrain that happens to be on the table, where armies with either lots of Titanic units, lots of aircraft, or really big hordes of things might struggle a bit more. Also, as it sounds that strategic reserves are going to be used by a stratagem, being able to concentrate force in really big units and keep them off the table is certainly going to be a positive. Armies like Raven Guard are already really powerful for deep striking Centurions, or even just aggressors out behind enemy lines, and if every single Space Marine army gets access to a stratagem that can keep units off the table like this, then we could see that sort of strategy farmed out to different chapters. Imagine a unit of Ultramarines aggressors paying a command point to put themselves in strategic reserves, and then potentially turning up on the table turn 2 in range of the enemy, and then using their Scions of Guilliman trait to be able to double fire into the enemy. We are assuming that they're going to be able to be put in reserve this way, but as far as I can tell, I can't see any reason why we can't have aggressors turning up and then double shooting into the enemy, or pretty much guaranteed 100 plus shots on turn 2 with AP-1. Of course, we haven't seen the strategic reserves rule previewed yet, but we do know it's going to be usable on the vast majority of units, and we know it's going to allow you to have things turn up on sides of the board that aren't just your starting side. There's certainly going to be a lot to investigate in the Space Marine arsenal that's going to have room to use this. They talked a little bit about Tremor Shells and Grav Amplification, 2 decent stratagems, although to be honest I can't really see how they have all that much more use in 9th edition rather than 8th. Tremor Shells is already good for slowing down enemy units, and Gravitic Amplification is just basically an increased damage strat that you use on Grav Devastators, so not really all that much has changed for them. However, I could see the Grav Amplification stratagem being used on a big unit of Centurion Devastators that you've brought in from Strategic Reserve, much in the same way that the Raven Guard like to now. That might be becoming an option for your chapter in the future. I guess we'll have to wait and see. In terms of other things that I'd add for the Space Marines to their list of things, I suspect that in 9th edition short-range shooting and melee are likely going to be more relevant. A lot of people are looking to adopt these new smaller minimum table sizes, although of course not everyone is, and any games played on them are going to have more relevance for things like Space Marine aggressors with their Boltstorm gauntlets and power fists. There's just going to be less of the table, so their threat bubbles will take up more of it. In general, I think this tends to suit Marines quite well as a faction. They tend to do a little bit of shooting and a little bit of melee, and a lot of their shooting is pretty close range. We also know that we can now shoot in close combat for a -1 penalty on heavy weapons. A lot of the new Primaris vehicles can just fly away, drop back and gun down the enemy, but I think that the various dreadnoughts and walkers that we have access to will certainly like this a lot. Things like the Redemptor are going to be stomping forwards, they might wind up getting tagged in close combat, and then blazing away with those Onslaught Gatling cannons while in close combat are just going to make a massive dent in the enemy no matter what they are. Strength 5 and AP -1 is pretty much universally damaging, whether you're a horde of infantry or just chipping away a few wounds as a tough vehicle. It could also be pretty nice for close-range shooty dreadnoughts, things like the Leviathan dreadnought. He's got pretty much anti-everything weapons with those enormous storm cannon arrays. So if you want to tag this guy in close combat to stop him shooting, then you're going to have whatever unit you tagged it probably deleted. Finally, it is stating the obvious, but with a massive influx of new units out of this Indomitus box, and then plenty more to come, it's almost guaranteed to be a small power boost. Even if they're all fairly well balanced in terms of points cost, it just means that there's a greater chance of one of these new units filling a role that you had in your army already and doing it a bit more efficiently. For example, if these new Primaris bikers, the Outriders, are pointed very equivalently to Inceptors, and it's really a bit of a toss-up between the two for most armies, then for dedicated close combat armies, such as Blood Angels, White Scars, or Black Templars, then the Outriders are likely going to be a better choice, just because they're going to pack more of a melee punch than the Inceptors, as the Inceptors are going to have more damage output weighted towards their shooting. Obviously that's fairly hypothetical, but it's just saying how two units can basically be balanced in terms of points, but different armies can get more value out of one or the other, therefore having the choice is great. In any case, as the poster boys of 40k, Space Marines don't tend to go neglected for long. I'm sure if for any reason they do tend to be a bit underpowered at the release of 9th, Games Workshop will likely take steps to improve them in things like chapter approved. I'm certainly looking forward to my Space Marines having new and interesting options to play with in 9th. So let's get on to that Neo-Volkite pistol and this Primaris Lieutenant then. This was just slipped in at the end of the article, sort of not really too related to the rest of it, but it's good to see a bit more of the rules of the models in the new Indomitus box. I just have to say that I really do like the look of this guy. I think he's a really iconic miniature, and is far more interesting than the other lieutenants that we've seen so far in my opinion. While I don't mind a fairly simple aesthetic on some characters, the initial lieutenants in the Dark Imperium box look almost indistinguishable from squad sergeants, and this guy is undeniably a character or leader with all that extra bling and the extra tabard. This guy carries a Neo-Volkite pistol, which is interesting as we don't tend to see very many new Volkite weapons. In general, they're ancient and rare technology, more often seen in the battlefields of the Horus Heresy than the battlefields of the 41st millennium. There are plenty that do exist in 40k though, mostly on Forge World vehicles such as the Imperial Guard Carnadon, the Armiger Moirax Knights, and plenty of the Space Marine vehicles from the Forge World range. In the background, they even largely fell out of use in the Great Crusade, due to being very hard to manufacture in large numbers, so demand largely outstrips supply, leading the legions to adopt other weapons. Volkite weapons are essentially heat ray weapons, can quite literally set their opponents on fire and have a horrific effect on organic tissue, burning flesh into ash in mere seconds. This guy's armed with something called a Neo-Volkite pistol, which isn't something that we've heard of as a prefix for Volkite weapons before, I believe, implying that Mr. Call or someone else in the Adeptus Mechanicus has learned how to make new ones. It's got a 15-inch range, is a pistol 2 weapon with strength 5, no AP and 2 damage. Furthermore, each unmodified wound roll of a 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any other damage. For me, Volkite weapons similar to this always seem to have a fairly generalist profile, where they're pretty much jack of all trades but master of none. It's because you're basically firing with 2 completely different effects, one that's good strength and no AP, generally meaning that it's going to be fairly good against lightly armoured infantry, but then 2 damage and the mortal wound effect, which actually makes them semi-reasonable against shooting heavies as well. Basically this just looks like a generic all-purpose weapon. This will do a decent amount extra damage compared with a bolter or something against any target, whether it's a horde of orcs or an Imperial Knight. Primaris Lieutenants don't get ballistic skill 2+, they're ballistic skill 3+, which on average means that you'll do something like around about 1 wound to Space Marine Intercessors each turn fired, about half a wound to a tough vehicle such as an Imperial Knight, or kill 1 or 2 orcs per turn. So not outstanding and not generally something I'd plan around, but just some opportunistic extra damage. To be honest, the reason that I'm more interested about this Lieutenant is that he's armed with a mastercrafted power sword, which is a pretty cheap weapon to be honest, it's only 6 points, and getting damage 2 over the base model power sword really is a big upgrade on a fighty character like this. That Storm Shield as well is also an excellent include on a Lieutenant, as unlike Captains, Lieutenants don't get the Iron Halos, which means that they don't normally have a 4+ invul save, so this guy coming stock with a Storm Shield really does make him a lot more survivable than the standard Lieutenant that you might get, and it's far more valuable on Lieutenants than it is on Captains for the most part. Going from no invul save to a 3+ invul save is a pretty massive jump compared with just going from a 4+1 to a 3+. So overall, I'm really quite liking the look of this guy. Having new options for the Lieutenants is certainly a positive. I kind of hope that we're allowed to select things a bit more freeform because of this model, say allowing the standard Lieutenants to take Storm Shields, as opposed to specifically being locked into this guy with this gear. Games Workshop have sometimes gone down either of these routes with the other Primaris releases, so I'll be interested to see which way they go this time. In any case, I'm certainly interested to see where the Space Marines go in 9th edition, and I'll be continuing to cover changes for them, both in terms of previews and once we actually get the rules out, so feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more from Auspex Tactics. I'd just like to quickly mention the Patreon prize draws that we're doing over the next couple of months, which we do regularly on the channel. Basically, each dollar pledged in support of the channel gets you 1 ticket in the draw, and then at the start of each month I select names with a random number generator and post out prizes to a few Patreons. This month there's the chance to win 2 Guard Start collecting boxes, plus command squads and a few extra guardsmen, and that will be happening at the start of July. And in August the prize draw will be for 3 copies of the Indomitors box set, so we're pushing the boat out a little bit on that one. So if you did fancy joining up to support the channel, then now's a pretty reasonable time. It is what allows me to keep on making these videos, and I'll certainly be scaling the prizes up, both in quantity and coolness, as the channel grows. In any case, a big thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.